Well, first of all, I want to conclude a reorganization of the staff that makes this staff more focused on the things we talked about earlier in this interview, the interagency approach, an international approach, and private-public. Secondly, I want to prove our ability to do what I'm doing right now, strategic communications. I want to be able to reach out and connect with people all around the circuit, and as you probably know, I'm a big advocate of using social networks to do that. So I'd say strategic communications is very important for us. Thirdly, I'm very interested, obviously, in progress in Afghanistan, and everything we can do from U.S. European Command to help our European allies in Afghanistan is a high priority for me. As you probably know, 85% of all the coalition forces in Afghanistan come from right here in U.S. European Command. We've got almost 40,000 partner troops who are operating there, plus a great many of the U.S. troops, of course, come out of our Army units that are home-based right here in Europe. So supporting that Afghan mission is right up at the top of my operational priority list. And then fourthly, I would say there are some key countries that I want to focus on the military-to-military relationships with. And three that are, I think, extremely important are Israel, Turkey, and Russia. Really want to deepen those military-to-military relationships because I believe that through having a strong connection with our uniformed militaries, we can then be helpful to our diplomats as they do the diplomatic process of maintaining peaceful and strong relations with vital countries like that. So there's a few right off the top.
When Russia invaded Georgia, I mean, mil-to-mil training in that country was pretty much at a standstill.
It was more than at a standstill. It was at a complete stop.
Where are we now?
We have generated what we call a work plan, which is a list of events that we want to undertake with Russia. We have moved on from the situation in Georgia, and we're working off this work plan today. It includes everything from trips by high-level generals and admirals exchanging visits to NCOs, non-commissioned officers, who come and attend courses or be part of our schools and have counterpart visits, to sending ships to have port visits, to having discussions about lessons learned, for example, in Afghanistan, to considering whether or not we may want to, as we develop our missile defense system, the phased adaptive approach, whether there is a role for Russia in that, to, I would throw out at the end, NATO and Russia, finding zones of cooperation between our NATO allies and our Russian partners. So we have a wide spectrum of activity. It's not as high as it was before the Georgia event, but we have moved on in the relationship, and we are conducting more interactive types of exercises, events, exchanges, and conferences with Russia today. And that's important that we do that. We can't afford to stumble back into a Cold War with Russia.
NATO, of course, is very active in Bosnia. I guess, firstly, what is the current situation there? But then also, on top of that, what we see in Bosnia, is that the same sort of peacekeeping operation, if you will, that we can expect to see in a country like Afghanistan down the road, for example?
Well, actually, let me talk about the Balkans generally. You're absolutely correct. NATO was very involved in Bosnia, but at this point NATO has stepped away from Bosnia, and that is now under the purview of the European Union. And I think they're doing reasonably well in a complex and demanding scenario there, as there are three different elements in the government. I wouldn't call it peacekeeping. There's a government in place, but the European Union is helping ensure stability remains there. Now, where NATO is very involved in the Balkans, Michelle, is in Kosovo, which is just south of Serbia. It's a new republic. At one time, it was part of Serbia, declared its independence just very recently. Today, 65 nations recognize Kosovo, and until very recently, we had over 20,000 NATO troops there, was reduced to 15,000 last year, and I've just reduced it to 10,000 troops. I'm comfortable at that level. I'm going to kind of hold at that point, evaluate the situation. Again, I wouldn't call it peacekeeping at this point, but we're there to ensure that we have stability, particularly as Kosovo and Serbia adjust their relations between each other. I'm confident that over the next year we'll be able to further reduce the level of NATO troops in Kosovo. So overall, I'm optimistic about the direction there. I think NATO's played an important role in the Balkans, both in Bosnia and currently in Kosovo, and I think that the future is bright. We just want to take our time and make sure we don't fall back.
Is that the same sort of thing we could see in Afghanistan then down the road?
I think so. I think that over time, I would be very happy to see Afghanistan progress along the direction that the Balkans has over the last 10 years. And it's been a 10-year process in the Balkans to get us to this point. But I think we've learned a lot of lessons from our operations in the Balkans, from a NATO context and from a U.S. context, about what we talked about a moment ago, the comprehensive approach, putting together political, economic, and military.
Okay, sir.